Y'all know we always gonna hype up our local theater scene, but sometimes you gotta get away. And that's why I wanna put y'all onto the Williamstown Theater Festival this summer. From July 17th to August 3rd, among the Berkshire Mountains in northwestern Massachusetts, over 130 artists will take the stage for nearly 100 performances. Some of the offerings include a world premiere from Jeremy O'Harris, a production of Camino Real starring Pamela Anderson and Nicholas Alexander Chavez, and a new adaptation of a Samuel Barber opera. Discounted hotel rooms are available through June 1st. Go to WTFestival.org and make your plans to immerse yourself in theater this summer. Today on CityCast Chicago, you probably already heard already or seen in one of the millions of memes, the new Pope has Chicago roots. So we've got a couple experts in to ask, who is Pope Leo XIV, formerly known as Cardinal Robert Prevost, and what does his selection mean for local Catholics? It's Monday, May 12th. I'm Jacoby Cochran, and this is what Chicago is talking about. We've got a couple of guests on the show today. First up is Sun-Times investigative reporter Lauren Fitzpatrick, who wrote one of the most comprehensive local profiles of Prevost ahead of the conclave. Lauren, welcome to CityCast Chicago.
Hi, how are you today?
I am doing very well. In your reporting, as you were breaking down Prevost's biography, the former cardinal, you said, according to some of the people you spoke to, that this was a long shot. What was your reaction when the white smoke had cleared and you heard this news?
I thought I was going to throw up. I got very hot as I realized that what I thought was a story that would have some local tie somewhere, all of a sudden became our story in a really profound way for the Catholics, for the Pope watchers, but for his family, for people who knew him growing up, for everybody he married, for his high school friends, for our neighbors. And it was a little bit overwhelming. And then partly it did come as such as a surprise because people way smarter than me who know a lot more about the Catholic Church and its politics and its inner workings and all of that all said, we don't see a path for an American, from someone from North America, born in the United States, to take the papacy. And that includes Cardinal Blaise Cupich, a few weeks ago, he couldn't see it himself, given our geopolitical power, given some history. Other folks put it as you just kind of don't want that conflict of interest. You want to keep the politics in one place and the papacy in another place.
Can I be honest? Your reaction is not only so genuine and so authentic, but I appreciate how human your reaction is, not only your own, but the way you frame the story. Because I think thinking about Conclave the last few weeks, I've been thinking of it as a consumer of a movie that I had watched recently, not as someone who grew up going to elementary school in a Catholic church on the south side of Chicago, St. Ephrata, where I was baptized, received First Communion, and confirmed as a child. I was not thinking about, like you said, the family of whoever was going to be the next pope, where they grew up as a child, and where they spent their time, what baseball teams they rooted for. But as this story started to unfold over the last couple of days, you mentioned Cardinal Blaise Cupich, who leads the Archdiocese of Chicago. It's become a much more local human story versus this person who leads 1.4 billion people across the world.
Yes. And that is what Pope Leo's childhood schoolmate, Noel niece, told me yesterday, that it all just used to seem so far away. It used to be so distant, but he's one of us. He is one of us. I do know it's still a fairly normal thing to ask in Chicago when you want to really know where somebody's from. You could ask for their address or their intersection.
Or their high school.
Or you could ask for their high school. But a lot of people will still ask, what's your parish?
Yeah. I played Pontius Pilate in our school's
Oh!
retelling of the Passion of the Christ, and my brother was Jesus. And so that's about as Catholic as it gets. And I am
Oh.
somebody who just not less a cultural or even a practicing Catholic, but what this moment has done in my family, I know in the families of some of our producers, Michelle Navarro talked about her mother's WhatsApp being blown up with her family members across Mexico. So now we know Pope Leo was born at Mercy Hospital, lived on the far south side of Chicago, spent much of his formative years in Dalton. What else did you learn about him in your reporting?
Oh gosh, where to start? Well, you went to Catholic school, you said?
Mm-hmm. Santa Rita, Mount Carmel.
I'm sure were there ladies who were around who kept that place going?
Mm-hmm.
That was his mom. She was one of those church ladies, those ladies at a Catholic school. What I learned is that Robert Prevost came from humble-ish beginnings. His dad served in World War II, lived in Hyde Park at the time that he went overseas. He gets that degree and becomes an educator. And by the time Robert and his brothers get born, Mr. Lou Prevost is like a school district administrator in the south suburbs. His mom's name is Mildred Martinez Prevost, and she, in her 30s, goes to DePaul and gets a degree in library science. And then 2 years later, she gets a master's degree in education. And I think she's in her late 30s before any of her children are born. They move to Dalton. They buy a brand new house in 1949. Their mortgage is $42 a month.
I saw that in the story, and I'm not gonna. I took a second and just sat there with that for a little bit. I'm not gonna hold you. I sat there with that number earlier today.
That might have been my favorite detail from this whole reporting experience, that I was able to see the documents with the little mortgage. So they buy this little brick stinker of a house. They join St. Mary of the Assumption Parish at the far southern tip of Chicago, where people ask the question, is it in Chicago? Is it in the Riverdale neighborhood? Is it in the Riverdale suburb? Is it in Dalton? And the legal answer is it's in Chicago, but if you threw a baseball, you would hit any of those other places. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
So the parish is the center of their lives. They're described as very devout, but also they're just really active. Their kids go to the school. The mom establishes a library. The dad is part of that as well. The mother constantly volunteers. She is in the choir. They are typical post-war Catholics who've moved presumably from a small apartment in the city into a brand new little house with a yard where their kids can walk everywhere and into the downtown and go to the movies and the carnival and the 4th of July parade. His mother gets a job at Mendel Catholic High School. The two older boys, Lou is the eldest, and then John, they go to Mendel. Millie's working in the library. Bob, Pope Leo the 14th, decides he's going in another direction, and he moves out of state. He goes to like a seminary prep high school that was called St. Augustine in Michigan, because I guess by that point he had some inkling that he wanted to be a priest. And basically he leaves at that point, and he'll come back for a little more education, and he'll come back to work as an Augustinian leader. But for the most part, he leaves and will spend the bulk of his career abroad, in Peru and then in Rome.
You use the past tense a lot in as you describe a lot of his former institutions, St. Mary's. I think you said was St. Augustine. Are a lot of his seminal institutions, particularly in the Chicagoland area, are any of them still open?
For the most part, the ones that seemed the most important to the family are gone. And it's not a story that's unique to Chicago, how, there used to be lots of Catholics living in certain neighborhoods and towns. Some of them moved away. Most of them stopped having 5, 6, 7, 8 children, right? So as these populations shifted, a lot of these places shut down. And the Augustinian Order of Priests still exists, and they're still in St. Rita. They are present in other parts of the Chicago area, but in terms of Mendel and St. Mary's and the college in Michigan. People wanted an outlet to go to be with him or see his history. And the St. Mary building is still there, but it's not like there'll be a mass in the next week to celebrate our guy's the Pope. It's gone. And yeah, it's a little bit sad. I find it sad.
In your reporting, you mentioned Noel Nice, who grew up going to St. Mary of the Assumption with Prevost, and is hoping that the church maybe could be brought back as a shrine of some sort. Do you think there's any chance that this current moment isn't just a moment, but is also maybe a reinvigoration or reopening of some of these staple institutions?
Wouldn't that be exciting if it were? And so we don't know enough about the real estate dealings of the archdiocese and what they would need to do. Mendel High School, for example, evolved and now is occupied by Gwendolyn Brooks College Prep Academies.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea of doing something different now with St. Mary is, a storyline I'm going to try to pursue myself and find out. On a much smaller scale, the little brick house that the Prevost bought back in 1949 is currently on the market. And one of my colleagues at the Sun-Times talked to the owner or the realtor or someone in charge yesterday who was like, maybe we're going to rethink this sale.
Yeah, today's price is not yesterday's price. Like today's plans is not yesterday's plan. I mean, it's really good to see people not just saying, from Chicago, but also specifically saying from Dalton.
It is a little suburb. And I want to say it's about 20,000 people now. And it is right at the southern edge of Chicago. It has seen more prosperous days. The area, the industrial jobs hollowed out, and like a lot of the other south suburbs.
Lost shopping malls, pay exorbitantly high property taxes.
Everybody's taxes the tax rates are super high.
That's my hope for the long run is that, if this is going to become a tourism attraction in Dalton, people stopping by the old church or stopping by the old home, I want to see the people who live in Dalton now, the residents who live there now, ultimately benefit. I really appreciate you making time to come on CityCast Chicago to break down this conversation with us.
Good luck, everybody. Good luck to us all. I don't know what this means going forward. It's a daunting thought. That was part of the nausea. The like, oh gosh, this is now our story. He's us. Wow. Landscapes have shifted just now, right under our feet. And up Dalton, I hope Dalton gets the love it deserves.
100%.
Mm-hmm.
Lauren Fitzpatrick is an investigative reporter with the Sun-Times. We will drop links in our show notes to her stories. Lauren, thank you for making time for the podcast today.
It was my pleasure.
Hi, I'm David Plotz, the CEO of CityCast. We've all set health goals: lose weight, exercise more, eat better. But without a plan, those goals often fade. That may have happened to you. It has definitely happened to me. And that's where Prolon comes in. Prolon's 5-day fasting mimicking diet gives you a science-backed, structured approach to stay on track and see real results. And now Prolon is upping their game with the new next-gen 5-day program, delivering the same science-backed benefits in a cleaner, more convenient, and more flavorful format. Prolon is a plant-based nutrition program featuring soups, snacks, and beverages designed to nourish the body while keeping it in a fasting state, triggering cellular rejuvenation and renewal. Next Gen builds on the original Prolon with 100% organic soups and teas, a richer taste, and ready-to-eat meals. Developed over decades at USC's Longevity Institute and backed by top U.S. medical centers, Prolon has been shown to support biological age reduction, metabolic health, skin appearance, fat loss, and energy. I've been doing the 5-day program, and I feel so much better. I really enjoy the tasty energy bars, the snacks and soups, and the fact that I can enjoy meals, even though the calorie count is super low. The flavors and textures are excellent. An olive oil snack here, broccoli and quinoa soup there, hibiscus tea, a yummy nut bar. It's got the benefits of a 5-day fast, but doesn't have the challenge of doing it with pure liquids. It's a system reset. And also, I know this sounds funny, but it's not. The packaging and directions are fantastic, clear, and well-organized and thoughtful. For a limited time, you can be first in line to experience the new Next Gen at special savings. Prolon is offering CityCast listeners 15% off site-wide, plus a $40 bonus gift when you subscribe to their 5-day program. Just visit prolonlife.com/city. That's PROLONLIFE.com/city to claim your 15% discount and your bonus gift. prolonlife.com/city. This episode of CityCast is sponsored by Babbel. Learning a new language opens the door to new friends, new cultures, maybe even a whole new life. So why not start the journey today with Babbel? You can start speaking a new language with confidence thanks to Babbel's conversation-based technique. It quickly teaches you useful words and phrases about the things you actually talk about in the real world. There are more than a dozen languages available for you to learn at your own pace, with material tailored to your individual proficiency level, interests, and time availability. I'm David Plotz, CEO of CityCast, and I've been learning Spanish with Babbel and brushing up a teeny bit on my French. But there's also Turkish, Swedish, Dutch, German, many more languages. Babbel's tips and tools for learning a new language are approachable and accessible. It's like having a private tutor in your pocket. I particularly love Babbel's guided conversations, which let me practice real-world conversations. What to say at the doctor's office, how to leave a party, using speech recognition to make sure I'm getting the pronunciation right. Babbel's mobile app and website have real-time feedback, progress trackers, and clear visualizations. They're helping me improve my Spanish in only 10 minutes a day. So get talking with Babbel. I want you to learn another language, so I'm teaming up with Babbel to gift you 55% off subscriptions, but only for CityCast listeners at babbel.com/citycast. Get up to 55% off at babbel.com/citycast. Spelled BABBEL.com/citycast. Babbel.com/citycast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Our second guest today is Mike Canaris, a professor and theologian at Loyola University. Mike, welcome to CityCast Chicago.
Thanks so much for having me.
I want to ask you the same question I'm asking everybody today. What was your reaction when you first heard that Robert Prevost was selected as Pope?
It was really disbelief. Now, I was on one of the news shows the night before, and I said he might be a candidate. So that made me feel good. But I was also framing that around how dubious I was that would happen, because I really did not believe that the Cardinals would make undoubtedly the two most influential people in the world, both United States citizens. But that's what they did, and that's where we are today. And so the whole globe is going to be reacting not only to what President Trump does and says, but now to what Pope Leo XIV does and says.
So I imagine a lot of people who are listening to this episode may not be familiar with the inner workings of a conclave, even if, like me, they've seen the film. Can you tell me why, even if you were skeptical that he could be chosen, why was he even seen as a candidate?
Yeah, so you have to realize that within the conclave, the movie was quite accurate on many fronts. And it's a 2/3 election, right? You need 2/3 of the votes. So there was 133 cardinals. They needed 89 votes. That means that there are people from all different continents, all different backgrounds, all different ideological perspectives. Now, they're all Roman Catholics, but they disagree about many, many things, and they had to coalesce around a candidate. I had read somewhere that in the last election, Pope Francis's election, the first round, 23 people got votes. So that for them to have coalesced in about 24 hours around Robert Prevost is really quite remarkable that happened that quickly. The only way that I can explain it, one is he does tick a lot of boxes in terms of managerial experience. He spent time in Latin America. He spent time running a whole order of priests in the church called the Augustinians. And so he worked in the dicastery for bishops, a Vatican aligned office, or a Vatican dicastery, we call it. And so he had a lot of great experiences, but then there has to be something about personal holiness, charisma, the idea that he would be an effective and capable presenter of what Christians believe is the good news that is spoken to every person who has ever lived. And that includes, in particular, the most marginalized and vulnerable. You know, when he was in Latin America, he was a bishop in Latin America for 20 years in Peru. He was in one of the far-flung dioceses, living in solidarity with poor people. And he brought all of that experience into the Vatican office job that he had, which was responsible for naming bishops all around the world. And so he was just a remarkable candidate. And I think the only way you can explain it is that people were moved by seeing his own personal experiences, context, and gifts.
You talked about his most recent position, naming bishops all around the world, a position that the late Pope Francis gave him. We've talked some about the new Pope's background here in Chicago and Dalton, but I think a lot of people are wondering, especially after Pope Francis's reputation as somewhat of a progressive, what do we know about what kind of Pope Leo might be?
Yeah, so every signal has been that this will be a papacy of continuity. Now, I know many people in Rome. I lived there for a few years and have lots of relationships there. I'm going to be there in 2 weeks, actually. And so everyone there was telling me how much of a personal, close friendship this new pope had with our previous pope. So that's one thing. The other thing that you can read into is the name itself. So a lot, when they're allowed to keep their own names, it hasn't happened in quite a while, but they're allowed to. But the name they choose is often significant and carries a lot of meaning. And so the name Leo, I encourage everyone to look at this document. There's a document called Rerum Novarum. It was written in the late 1800s, and it was written by Leo the 13th, the last pope to take the name Leo, and it deals with labor rights, unions, social and domestic obligations, wise stewardship of finances, including the excesses of unbridled capitalism, the dangers there. And so it's really the launching point for the church's social engagement with the world. And it's an important text. And by choosing the name, he not only nods to that, but also all the way back to Leo the First's peacekeeping efforts that kept Attila the Hun from sacking Rome. And so you have this whole trajectory of why he chose this name. It's really a tell that he's going to be moving towards a deep social engagement with issues like migration, people on the move, poverty, perhaps even women in the church.
Do we have any sense on how he's moved as it relates to women in the church, the LGBTQIA community, the families of the divorced, the same-sex couples with children?
Right. So these are the places where the last conclave was really a referendum on Pope Francis's view on these. As most people are aware, he sort of broadened the room in terms of some perhaps gray areas in doctrine where people of all faiths and none could be really included in the message. And my view is that that's going to continue, that this dialogical encounter between the church and the church's teachings and the church's proclamation of the good news will also be in contact with the realities of the world and people where they are in their own context, their own life journeys, their own questioning.
Prevost was also the subject of controversy in the Chicago area and abroad as a leader in the Augustinian order. Specifically, he's been accused of not doing more to bring transparency to the order over sex abuse allegations. What can you tell us about how that played out here?
Yeah, let me always frame this in a way that is in solidarity with victims, not defensive. And I love the word you use there about transparency, right? That we have a call for transparency here, because accepting unacceptable behavior is never in accord with living a righteous life or a life in line with the gospel. However, I simply don't know enough about the case to personally comment on his culpability, for instance, but I would hope and trust and be convinced that his willingness to be authentic, to talk about this, to allow it to be investigated. And I think that's the case. And my hope and prayer, and with every fiber of my being, I long for a church that takes that seriously. And I hope that we're on the path for that with him.
It's been a long time since Prevost lived in the Chicago area, but obviously Chicago Catholics are claiming him. I mean, just Chicagoans in general, whether they're religious or not. And we know that there are a ton of Catholics who call the Chicagoland area home. Does Pope Leo's selection say anything about Chicago's prominence or role in the Catholic Church overall?
Sure. I mean, absolutely. That, like, for those of us who are interested in this, I'm a theologian. I've dedicated my life to teaching and study of the church. The next era of church history runs right through Chicago. I mean, it's unbelievably exciting for people of all faiths and none to be living in these times when this has never happened before, and that this puts the city front and center on all kinds of issues, not only around Vatican affairs, but on questions of migration, questions of socio-political justice, questions of the media. All of this is going to be a new world for us. And so I think there is great celebration and pride that this is the city where that has happened.
we've done episodes on people making a pilgrimage to Des Plaines to see Our Lady of Guadalupe. People are already making pilgrimage to Dalton now to see where Pope Leo grew up. Is there going to be a rise in Pope tourism in the Chicagoland area, in Dalton specifically?
I mean, I think people are always going to be interested in the background and the life of the Holy Father. I mean, I just think that's the case. The real question, I think, is whether or not he's going to come. You know, a Pope hasn't come here in a long time, and he's a very vigorous 69-year-old man, and I would be shocked if there is not at some stage a visit, which I think would just be an absolutely remarkable thing for the city to celebrate together, the first native son being the successor to Peter. This goes all the way back 2,000 years to the Galilean fishermen. The Latin phrase is tu es Petrus, you are Peter, they sing in St. Peter's Basilica. And the Peter who's alive now is now one of our own.
I mean, even as you have, we talked earlier about this being a likelihood. Did you ever imagine that this would be the case and that the first ever would come so close to home?
No, I mean, I didn't. I never imagined that I would live to see a pope. You know, it's interesting. I want to keep calling him. I'm working to do this because we don't have the adjectival form in English, that he is a United Statesian. You know, I've been corrected a number of times by people in Latin America who say, don't refer to yourself as an American. We are all Americans. You're a United Statesian. They have it in Spanish, the phrase, and in Italian. And so he's really an American in the best sense of the word because he is a United States passport holder, but he's also a Latin American. I mean, if you noticed when he gave his opening speech, it was all in Italian, but he dipped into Spanish for a few sentences so that he could address the people that he served and lived with in Peru directly. And I think that really speaks to his global appeal and his roots as a full American, a North and South American. I just want to encourage people to appreciate every aspect of this moment. Again, it's one that will not come again. The notion that for the next probably about 20 years, we are going to be front and center on so many questions that move us even beyond the tribalism and toxicity in the United States right now, and put Chicago on everyone's radar all over the world. People are celebrating with us. Imagine the different places in Africa and the Philippines and Latin America and Europe celebrating with us today. I encourage people to take that seriously.
Mike Canaris is a professor and theologian at Loyola University. We really appreciate you making time for us today.
Thanks so much for having me. I hope to come back.
Before we get out of here, please head over to our website, chicago.citycast.fm. There you can subscribe to our daily newsletter, Hey Chicago, and check out our newsletter editor, Emmy Mack's roundup of some of her favorite Pope memes. One more thing, some good news. We got a couple great open mics to put on your calendar this week, including a South Asian queer open mic tonight at Dorothy off Chicago and Western. Tomorrow night, Something Real for the People open mic at the Promontory on 53rd and Lake Park. And then Wednesday, Luya Poetry presents Workers of the World, an open mic at California Clipper on California and Augusta. I will drop a link in the show notes to each of these. As always, I appreciate you for listening and reading. We're going to be back bright and early tomorrow. I'll talk to you then. Peace.